When we think of ancient artifacts, we tend to think of great discoveries like the Rosetta Stone or the Mask of King Tut or other stuff like that. In this video, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to talk about ancient artifacts similar to these, but more specifically, those that are cursed. We're talking cursed gemstones, tomb artifacts, haunted dolls, and many more. So join me right now as we get started with this iceberg. We're going to kick this thing off with tier 1, starting with the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is an absolutely massive 45.52 carat diamond that was originally mined in India. This was all the way back in the 17th century, and this thing has been famous in popular culture ever since. After it was found in India, it was acquired by a Frenchman named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, or something like that. This Frenchman got the Hope Diamond and took it back to France, where it was bought by the King Louis XIV. Now, once Louis XIV got the diamond, he had it cut, because originally it was just a raw blue diamond. It went on to be known as the Blue Diamond of the Crown of France. So this thing was very special, if you can't tell. Now, the diamond would be passed down the lineage of Louis XIV, but here's the thing. Everybody who was actually in ownership and in possession of this diamond had something pretty bad happened to him. The most notable in this series of unfortunate events was his great-grandson Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. Both of them were guillotined during the French Revolution. Supposedly because both of them had worn it at some time or another, they both befell this fate. Sometime during the French Revolution, this Hope Diamond was stolen and then it was cut down to make what we now know as the Hope Diamond. Originally, it was even bigger than 45 carats. It was like 60-something carats. It was thought for a very long time that the Hope Diamond was cut from this French blue diamond, and then it was confirmed. Scientists were able to use CAD software to confirm that this was a diamond, but that's not important. Basically, everybody that had this thing after this point had something bad happen to them. A guy named Jacques Collet bought the diamond, and he ended up taking his own life. Another guy bought this diamond from Collet before he took his life. This poor guy ended up being offed by Russian revolutionaries. This guy, before he was off, loaned it to a woman, and this woman was taken out by one of her lovers. Quite literally taken out, you know what I'm saying? About 10 people over in India and Asia where this thing came from ended up, getting offed as well. It was crazy stuff. Somebody got thrown from a cliff. That Tavernier guy that bought the diamond in India and brought it to France originally ended up being eaten by a pack of wild dogs in Constantinople. The list goes on and on and on. There is literally a curse associated with this thing, and you will not convince me otherwise. King Tut's tomb. Now, King Tut's tomb is technically a place instead of a relic or an artifact or something like that, but it has relics and artifacts in it that are associated with the curse as well. Now, this curse is exactly as it sounds. The Egyptologist Howard Carter and his beneficiary Lord Carnarvon, or however you say that, opened the tomb of King Tut. Everybody died subsequently. Now, that's not completely true, but a ton of people that were there or that visited it or anything like that, they just ended up dead. Alright, so on November 29th of 1922, Howard Carter and his whole crew opened up this tomb. The financial backer of this expedition was named George Herbert. 4 months and 7 days after they opened the tomb, this guy died from an infected mosquito bite. Another financial backer of the expedition, George J. Gold, ended up dying as well because he visited the tomb, and not long after that, he was just dead. 4 more people that were members or adjacent to members of the team ended up dying in really weird, mysterious ways after they opened the tomb. Now, it's probably all coincidence, but what might have caused all these people to die of random things whenever they were all associated with this curse of this tomb? Well, the scientific explanation is that there was toxic mold or bacteria or something like that. This doesn't make too much sense because Howard Carter himself, who was the closest person to this whole thing, ended up living 16 more years. It was probably just a case of public hysteria because everybody was scared they were opening up these tombs in Egypt over there, but it might have just been that. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this one, because this curse, there's a whole movie about it, so it's just pretty awesome. Just real quick, thank you so much for watching this video. You have no idea how much it means to me that you're willing to support my little channel here. If you're enjoying this video so far, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. And now, let's get back into it. The Koh-i-Noor Diamond. The Koh-i-Noor Diamond is a whopping 105 carat diamond. This makes the Hope Diamond look small in comparison. Now, this diamond, like the Hope Diamond, also comes from India, but now it rests in Britain. It's actually set in the crown of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, so the Queen Elizabeth that died a few years ago, her mother's crown. The curse of this diamond is a little bit different than the curse of the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond, everyone that wore it came to a very unfortunate fate. This diamond, the male rulers that were in possession of this diamond, something very bad happens to them, but the females that have it, like that Queen Elizabeth's mother, whatever you call her, they're okay. Now this diamond goes way back. The legendary origins of this diamond go back to somewhere in like the 14th century AD in ancient India. There were a bunch of ancient empires and dynasties and stuff like that in power in India in these early centuries. Records show that somebody from one of these empires in the 14th century raided another one and they stole this diamond from them all the way back then. Going back to all these years ago, there's a quote that describes the curse of this diamond. The quote says, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortune. Only God or woman can wear it with impunity." All right, so before that quote was written and then ever since then, every male owner of this diamond would either lose it in a bloody battle or they would lose their life or something like that. It was literally terrible to have this thing. They would be at the top of the world like the quote suggests, but what did it cost them? It would eventually end up in the hands of the British after the Sikh Empire was dissolved or whatever. Ever since the British got a hold of this diamond, they only let the females of their family hold it because they know of the curse and they know that if a king or somebody like that is in possession of it, they'll probably die. Now that is pretty cool if even the British royalty obeyed this curse. The Dybbuk box. Now the Dybbuk box is basically an antique wine cabinet that was once owned by a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust. The thing is, it's said to be possessed by a Dybbuk, which is a Jewish mythological ghost, basically. It's not a friendly ghost that's going to go alongside the person and be their best friend or anything like that. It's an evil ghost. It's a ghost that will latch on to a person and basically completely ruin their life. Now, the story of this thing goes back to 2003, and then before that, obviously, but 2003 is whenever this thing became prominent. A guy named Kevin Mannis bought it at an estate sale in Portland. He brought it home, and supposedly he started having nightmares, night terrors, and even was losing his hair, all this crazy stuff. Supposedly, he then gave this box to his mom because all this bad stuff had been happening to him after he bought it, and she had a stroke the same day. That right there kind of shows some red flags to me. It's probably cursed, or at least there's a story about it being cursed. Eventually, this guy Manus decided to sell this thing on eBay. He wrote up this long article about how this thing had been haunting him and haunting his mother and everything like that. He even came up with the Holocaust survivor story. It probably didn't actually belong to a Holocaust survivor. He came up with this entire story to sell this box on eBay for a lot of money. So this thing's probably not actually cursed, but the Dybbuk spirit was a whole thing in ancient Jewish mythology. That stuff in itself is creepy, and maybe this guy eventually got haunted by one of these ghosts because of this. Who knows? Kind of like blasphemy, so maybe they'd punish him or something. The Bassano vase. All right, so this is a vase that was made of pure silver. It was given as a wedding gift to a woman in the 15th century in Italy. Now, we don't know much about this woman, but we do know that vases were a common wedding gift to be given like the night before a wedding or something like that all the way back then. Supposedly, this vase weighed 4 pounds because it was made out of pure silver, so obviously it was pretty heavy. She was given this vase the night before her wedding. As the wedding was supposed to begin, she was nowhere to be found, so her future husband went to go look for her. He found her body holding this vase really tightly, like in a death grip, literally, and she was either dead or dying. There's literally no explanation to this at all. After her death, the vase was given to somebody in her family, and not long after that, that person died holding the vase as well. Then somebody else was given it, and they also died. I don't know if they were holding the vase or not because this is from the 15th century, but still. After all these people died from this curse supposedly on this vase, they decided to contact a priest. They don't know if this thing was made with cursed materials or if somebody put a curse on it before they gave it to this bride or what happened, but the priest said to bury it on sacred ground. They buried it, and 500 years later, in 1988, somebody in Italy dug it up, and they had written a note with it and said, like, this vase brings death or something like that. This guy doesn't care about that note because this thing's awesome. It's like a solid silver vase from the 15th century, so he sells it at an auction house because what else would he do with it? It sells for about $2,200 to a pharmacist, and then that pharmacist passed away. This pharmacist's family sells it to a doctor. and the doctor passes away. This literally just keeps happening. People keep getting it and people keep dying. I don't know how true some of these accounts are, if these people are actually dying, if this was even real, especially the story from the 1500s, because it could have been propaganda about a vase that people wanted to display in a museum or something, but still, this stuff is wild. So this keeps going on until a police officer eventually gets the vase. He tries to sell it to a bunch of different museums and none of them take it because they've heard of this curse. Supposedly, he buried it in a lead box in cemetery somewhere. Nobody knows where this vase is today in the ground buried. Apparently, it's just lost to history. It's in the ground and nobody will ever find it. At least, hopefully, nobody will ever find it, because if they do, you know what'll happen to them. The woman from Lim. This woman from Lim is a limestone statue that was uncovered in Lim, Cyprus, that was supposedly carved in like 3500 BC. Now, like a bunch of these other artifacts, supposedly it has a curse of death upon the owner. Now, it's what you call a cruciform statue, or in a cross formation type thing. It was carved by the people of Cyprus at that time, known as Cypriots. There are a bunch of statues very similar to this that were found buried in like tombs and graves, stuff like that. Now, in the modern day, this thing has gained the nickname the Goddess of Death statue. There was this guy named Lord Elfont who originally bought this thing after it was unearthed. Now, this was in like the 19th century, so late 1800s. Within 6 years of buying this statue, Lord Elfont and 7 of his family members passed away. Now, it could be a disease, or it could have been literally anything, but they're attributing this to a curse. They do this because it happens to somebody else after the fact. This guy named Ivor Minucci. He bought it, and within 4 years, his entire family passed away. It happened 2 more times, and now it's in a glass case in a museum with nobody touching it. Nobody alive has touched it. It sounds kind of like the Ark of the Covenant. If you touch it, you die. Now, obviously, that's probably not the case. It's probably just a coincidence, or it's probably just all folktale, but anyway, I thought this was pretty cool. The Black Orlov Diamond. The Black Orlov Diamond is a 67.5 carat diamond from, guess where? India. Supposedly, it served as an eye in a statue of a Hindu god named Brahma. That was until it was stolen by a Jesuit guy. Like these other diamonds, because it was stolen from its homeland, it supposedly has a curse. The first diamond dealer that took it to the United States, a guy named J.W. Paris, ended up taking his own life. This guy and 2 other people that came in contact with the diamond and actually owned the diamond ended up jumping off of buildings or jumping off of stuff and taking their own lives. Oh yeah, and supposedly this thing was originally a 195 carat diamond, which is absolutely insane. The reason it's not so big now is because they literally recut it to be 67.5 or whatever I said carats to like deny the curse from happening again, something like that. It's still around today. As a matter of fact, Felicity Huffman, who played one of the women on Desperate Housewives, I only know that show because my wife made me watch it, but anyway, she was supposed to wear it at the Red Carpet Awards or whatever awards they have for TV back in like 2006 or something like that. But anyway, she didn't wear it. Either it disappeared or she just decided not to wear it or what, but she didn't wear it. She did not win the award that she was put up for, and it's probably a good thing, because who knows? If she would have actually worn that thing, maybe she would have jumped off a building too. Now, that's terrible to say, and I don't even like saying it out loud, but if this thing is cursed and it makes people that have it and own it and wear it jump off buildings, I don't think I'd be wearing it, even to an award show to stun the public. The Crying Boy paintings. Now, the Crying Boy paintings are a mass-produced painting by this guy named Giovanni Bragolin, who was obviously Italian. It was distributed across the world from the 1950s onward, but it's rumored to be cursed. The curse that is supposedly attributed to these paintings is due to a British tabloid article from like 1985. This article interviewed a firefighter who claimed that these paintings were found in homes that were burned down all the time. Basically, these homes would burn down and there would be Crying Boy paintings there. And that's not just a one-off, like they found them all the time. Now, there's obviously fringe theories out there about this painting. Maybe this kid that was painted in this painting died to a fire or something like that. Maybe it was due to a curse that was put on this artist or something because he had a terrible, tragic life. Maybe literally anything. The most likely explanation behind this one is that it had like a fire retardant varnish on it or something. All these mass-produced copies, they all use the same thing. None of them burned because they had fire-resistant material over them, so they literally couldn't burn. It didn't stop people from like throwing their Crying Boy paintings out and burning them so that, you know, it wouldn't burn their house down. It's most likely just a case of like confirmation bias. Like all these firefighters would see one painting in one house and they would see it everywhere because because everybody had these back then, and none of them burned because they were fire resistant. But who knows? Busby's stoop chair. Now, the Busby stoop chair, or dead man's chair, is an oak chair that was supposedly cursed by the murderer Thomas Busby in 1702. He did this right before he was hung. Alright, so this cursed chair sat at the entrance of this Busby Stoop Inn in Yorkshire, England for centuries. Supposedly, a bunch of people that would sit in this chair would end up dead somehow. Why this chair itself was actually cursed by this Thomas guy, we really can't figure out. Like, maybe he was sitting in it whenever the cops came there and arrested him for murdering his father-in-law or something like that. Apparently, this Thomas guy and his father-in-law were running like a coin counterfeit operation as well as other criminal enterprises. So they were partners in crime, literally, and they disagreed about something, and Thomas killed his father-in-law. He was then sentenced to death, and he either cursed this chair because he was walking out being arrested by cops, or really, we don't know. Either way, there were many stories in the centuries after this that said people sat in this chair on their way through. You know, they were staying at this inn or whatever. They stayed there for a little while, sat in this chair, and then they would go on to pass away. I don't know about this one because this is just a little bit too up in the air, but it'd be pretty cool if there was a chair that was actually cursed by this madman. All right, now we have another one of the most famous entries on this entire list, the Annabelle doll. If you've kept up with the current genre of horror for the past like 50 years or so, you've probably heard of the Annabelle doll. This is a Raggedy Ann doll that is supposedly haunted, as according to the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. These people are like the backbone of paranormal investigation today. Like, they literally inspired so many things, including like The Conjuring. That was literally their life story. A lot of embellishments, but still. Now let's throw it back to the 1970s with the original owner of this Raggedy Ann doll. This girl, who was like a college student or something, said that this thing could move on its own and do creepy stuff. Supposedly, a medium told this student that this doll had been possessed by the spirit of a woman named Annabelle. Annabelle was a 6-year-old girl who had tragically passed away many years ago. The Warrens went along with this story and said that this thing was possessed by a demon or a spirit or whatever. They put it on display in their occult museum in Connecticut. Throughout the years, tons of visitors visited their museum, and supposedly they had bad things happen to them if they did something wrong to this doll. Supposedly, a priest came into their museum and insulted the doll, insulted everything they had going on in there because it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Later on, he ended up driving his car into a tree. The doll supposedly stabbed a homicide detective as well. All this stuff is absolutely crazy, but I'm not going to say anything bad about this doll and about this story because I don't want to be the next victim. Now we can move on to tier 2. We're going to start off tier 2 with the Ring of Sinisianus. This is a golden ring that was found in Silchester, England in the 1700s. It was found while a farmer was plowing up his field, and it supposedly dates back to around 400 AD. It's of Roman origin, and it once belonged to a man named Silvianus. Now before I give you the rest of the lore and backstory on this ring, I want to tell you one thing that I think is pretty interesting. It supposedly influenced J.R.R. Tolkien to create the One Ring from all of his books. You'll see why in just a minute, but it was pretty much a perfect inspiration for him to create this. It's kind of similar in ways. Now, this guy Silvianus was a Roman, like I said. He was in England, in Gloucester, or however you say that, in the baths of a Celtic god named Nodens. So these baths were dedicated to the worship of that god. But anyway, he had his ring there and it got stolen. Silvianus believed that it was Sinisianus that stole the ring. Now, nobody really knows why he thinks that, but that's what he thought. As a result of his thinking here, he prepared what was called a curse tablet that was dedicated to that god Nodens, who was kind of like a bad guy, like not a bad guy, but a almost rascally type god that would definitely help him out with a curse on somebody else. But what this tablet said was, for the god Nodens, Silvianus has lost the ring and has donated 1/2 its worth to Nodens. Among those named Sinisianus permit no good health until it is returned to the temple of Nodens. So he was quite literally cursing this guy Sinisianus on this curse tablet, and he wanted this god to help him do that. That's kind of where Tolkien gets that inspiration for the curse, most likely. Now, nobody knows who this guy Sinisianus was or if he was actually cursed and something happened to him, but it's pretty cool. Now, here's one of the even cooler parts of all of this. Tolkien was actually just a professor of like Celtic mythology and stuff like that at the time of finding this ring or whatever. Somebody found it and brought it to him, like his friend that was an archaeologist found it, brought it to him to help him determine who this god was and everything else. After that, he wrote his books. So you can imagine this kind of inspired him to create the greatest works of epic fantasy of all time. I think this was an awesome way to start out tier 2 of this list. Karun treasure. Karun treasure refers to a collection of 363 artifacts from the ancient Lydian civilization. This was a civilization in western Turkey that flourished during the Iron Age, so like from 800 BC through like 550 BC before it was conquered by the Persians. There are some really cool pieces in this collection, but that's not even what the main part of this entry is about. It's really about the legal battle between Turkey and New York. Where does New York come into play here? Well, actually, it's like the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. These pieces were found in Turkey and they were stolen by somebody who then sold them to this New York museum, and then they underwent a massive legal battle to determine who would actually get custody of them. Obviously, Turkey should, because it was, I mean, it's their natural resources, not their natural resources, but it's artifacts discovered on their land and it was stolen from the government. So yeah, they should get these. That's stupid. Anyway, now basically everything in this collection comes from one tomb. It was from the burial tomb of a princess. They had silver treasures, gold treasures, all kinds of jewelry and stuff like that, and they even had coins, like the first coins in the world. There's also the belief amongst the people in Turkey from where this stuff was discovered that all this treasure is cursed. So why wouldn't they just want to give it to New York? Who knows? This curse supposedly gives people something like gold fever, so they literally just get sick when they touch it, and I don't know how that would work out. It's probably not even real, kind of like the curse of the King Tut's tomb or whatever. That's probably not real either. I don't know. Pompeii relics. Alright, so if you live under a rock, in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted and covered Pompeii in ash. Well, ash and other stuff, but anyway, everything that was preserved then is what we're going to call Pompeii relics. There's a ton of stuff that was left behind here because literally everything was just covered and basically concreted in, plastered in, because that's what happens whenever a volcano demolishes a place like this. There's artifacts of Roman living, there's graffiti on the walls, carvings. It's just really cool stuff. Really sad stuff, but still. Now there's actually a curse associated with this stuff. Apparently a ton of tourists and random people steal stuff from this place, and they have all the way back in like 79 AD. As soon as the lava and ash settled, they started stealing stuff. Now apparently the people that have been stealing stuff have bad things happen to them, which is, you know, not really a bad thing in my mind, but whenever you actually hear about what happened to them, it's kind of rough. Nobody should be stealing from a historical place like this. Nobody should be stealing, period. But this is just dumb. But anyway, let's talk about it. Around 15 years ago, a woman named Nicole was a tourist in Pompeii. She stole pottery shards, little fragments of stuff, and just took it on with her. Ever since she stole this stuff, she had terrible luck. Like, she had very bad financial problems, and then she ended up with breast cancer and getting a double mastectomy, which is absolutely horrible. But anyway, she returned all this stuff in a, like, unidentified package that said from Nicole. It wrote out her story, stuff like that. It sent it back to Pompeii. This is not a one-off story. Tons of packages like these come in from people that stole stuff, people that are touring and just have sticky hands. They just grab some stuff and put it in their pockets and take it back with them. They receive tons of packages like this with apology letters saying that they don't want these curses to affect the rest of their families as well, so they're returning them. That is a real curse in my mind. You can't help but feel bad for all the terrible things that happen to these people, but they shouldn't have stolen things in the first place. It doesn't make up for what happened to them, but you let me know what you think about this because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth here. Cursed ballista balls. Now, if you don't know what a ballista is, it's basically a massive crossbow that shoots stuff like balls, like projectiles, stuff like that, stuff that's gonna destroy whatever it hits. These things were popular in ancient Greece, and I can only assume Rome and places like that. What's the deal here about the ballista balls being cursed, though? Well, here's a story. In March of 2020, a cursed ballista ball was returned to like the State Department of Israel. According to a letter or intermediary or something like that, this guy stole this ball 15 years ago, but now he's having to return it because of its curse. It was supposedly one of the ballista balls that Rome used against like Jerusalem back in the ancient biblical days. Now, this guy that stole the ball 15 years before 2020 was cleaning around for the Passover or whatever they have over there, and he found the ball once again. Apparently, this whole time he had been living his life. He has a wife and kids now, but anyway, he had a sinking pit of despair in his stomach or something about stealing this ball. When he found it, he realized that it was horrible and had to go. And also at the same time, COVID-19 was going on, so he was thinking that it was like the apocalypse or something, and it might have been his fault for stealing a ball. He used this opportunity to return it anonymously to like the Israeli government or whoever. Just like that last entry, this was not the only ball that's been returned. 2 other ballista balls had recently been returned as well by somebody else because they had the same sinking pit of despair in their stomach. Honestly, I don't believe these balls are cursed or anything like that. I think these people are just growing up and growing a conscience. It might be the same case for those people over there that stole the Pompeii relics, but they actually had really bad luck. These people just feel bad about it. So yeah, I think they just have a conscience. The Terracotta Army's tomb. All right, this is one of my favorite things to talk about on this entire channel. The Terracotta Army is an army of terracotta soldiers that are buried in a massive mausoleum dedicated to the Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang. This guy was the first Chinese emperor, and he was buried in this mausoleum with this terracotta army around 200 BC or so. Now this tomb, this massive mausoleum is, like I say, massive. Anyway, in 1974, some farmers found this thing. They found this massive tomb with all this crazy stuff in it. Now, to give you an idea of just how big of an undertaking this was, historians estimated that it would take 700,000 workers over 3 decades to build. That's crazy. You want to know something else that's crazy? All these historians think that all 700,000 of these workers were buried alive in this tomb so that nobody knew anything about it. Where it was, nothing. Obviously, there were a couple that escaped, but either way, this is wild. Now, what the Terracotta Army is an army of 8,000 life-sized army soldiers that serve this Qin Shi Huang guy in the afterlife. There are terracotta horses, bronze chariots, all kinds of stuff. It's literally a fully functioning army, except for the fact that it's made out of terracotta. Now, in 1974, this place was discovered by like workers, farmers, just literally low-class laborers. They were drilling a well, and that's whenever they discovered this massive mausoleum. What happened to them afterwards was unfortunate. Like I said, there were 7 workers, and every single one of them either died in poverty or they had to sign little books about their discovery, stuff like that, or the third option, and terrible, they took their own life. It can't get much worse than this, but apparently some of the archaeologists that started uncovering this stuff, they also died. There were booby traps in this mausoleum. They passed away due to these. Some of them might have even been poisoned by the Mercury River that runs through this thing. It's crazy stuff. Now, this Mercury River is probably dried up, but we actually don't know because we haven't made it all the way into this place yet, because it might cave in if we expose open air. All this terracotta might just crumble, stuff like that. Honestly, this is one of those things in the earth that we probably just shouldn't uncover. It might release a Pandora's box of unfortunate events, because it already has. I do think we should put some kind of drone down there or something. We need to find out what's going on there, because if there's actually a flowing river of mercury and it's not dried up, that's probably the coolest thing I've ever heard of. Let's go to the next one. King Tut's silver trumpets. This refers to a pair of trumpets that were found in King Tut's burial chamber. One of them was silver, but the other one was like bronze and copper. These are considered the oldest 2 operational trumpets on the face of the earth, and that's crazy. King Tut died in around 1300 BC, so these things are over 3,000 years old, and if they still work today, that's kind of crazy. All right, here's where the curse comes in. They were silent for over 3,000 years, like I said, until they weren't. In 1939, somebody played them over a BBC News broadcast. This was in 1939, so can you guess what happened a few months later? World War II broke out. These things were silent for 3,000 years, played on the radio a couple months later, World War II. Is it a coincidence? Probably, but it might not have been. The next time these trumpets were played, and it might have just been over the recording on the radio, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but anyway, this was in 1967. It was right before a 6-day war between Egypt and Israel that I didn't even know happened. It was played again in 1990, and then the Gulf War started. The most recent time it was played was in 2011, right before the Egyptian Revolution. These things are bad luck. Why are we still playing these? If they're played again, it's probably going to be World War III or something, because that could happen at any point anyway. I really think it's just a bunch of coincidences, because they could play these at literally any time, and then some kind of skirmish in the world is going to go on. But the fact that the first one was World War II, it's a little bit, a little bit creepy. Honestly, everything to do with King Tut seems to be cursed, like his tomb with the massive curse on Howard Carter and his expedition crew and these trumpets. I think we should just leave that guy alone. Leave him in Egypt. The cursed amethyst, or Delhi purple sapphire. All right, so this is a gemstone found in India, like so many of the other gemstones already on this list. It was originally incorrectly identified as a purple sapphire because I guess we just didn't know what amethyst was back then. And by back then, I mean during the 1800s, whenever this thing was was ransacked and stolen from India. In 1857, an Indian rebellion was crushed by the British Army. They decided to teach the Indians a lesson and basically loot all of their Hindu temples for all their gemstones and gold and everything they had. The temple that this purple amethyst came from was the temple of Indra, which was like the god of war, so you can imagine where this is going. This cavalryman for the British Army, Colonel Ferris, stole this purple amethyst from this temple, thinking that he would secure his family's financial future with it. As soon as he returned to Britain with this gemstone, his entire family went completely broke, and then they basically all died of illness. It's really crazy that literally the exact opposite of what he wanted happened. Like, he thought it was going to bring financial freedom to his family, and it ended up breaking them financially and then killing them. One of this guy Ferris's sons actually lived, and he inherited this gemstone from his dad, and then for some reason, I guess he thought it was cursed, he gave it to his friend. His friend took his own life. This wasn't the last time that something bad happened to somebody in possession of this gemstone. After this guy's friend took his own life, he ended up back with the gemstone. Then he gave it to somebody else named Edward Heron Allen or something like that. I think that's right. Well, this guy gave it to his friend who was a singer. You know, he was probably trying to get with that woman or whatever. But anyway, she ended up having her voice completely gone. Like, everything to do with her singing voice, that was her entire career, it was gone as soon as she got this gemstone. This confirmed to this Heron Allen guy that this thing was cursed. So he threw it into the like ocean or canal or whatever. Now, this is where it gets a little bit iffy as to whether this actually happened or not, because he apparently says that somebody went and dove in the river and they found this gemstone. They realized it was his, gave it back to him again, this Heron Allen guy. This guy was absolutely terrified of this gemstone now. So what he did was basically he bound it to some other gemstones, jewelry type stuff that was supposed to seal the curse. Then he put it in 7 like nesting dolls worth of boxes and then locked it in a safe. He lived a normal life for the most part after this, and then 3 years after his death, his daughter was able to open the bank vault. It was actually in a bank vault, not just a safe. Open the bank vault, get this thing out, and then he wrote a note in there that said to cast this thing into the sea, but you could actually do what you want to with it, but he recommends you cast it into the sea. As of 2007, this thing was on display in the Natural History Museum. I don't know where it's at today, but all I know is I don't want to come in contact with it because I don't want anything to do with this curse. The Black Prince's ruby. Now, this thing's actually not a ruby. It was misidentified as a ruby hundreds of years ago. It's actually red spinel, which I don't even know what that is, but anyway. This is one of the crown jewels of the United Kingdom, so it's quite literally placed on like that fancy red crown. This thing's history goes back to like the 14th century with British people. It was thought to have originally been mined from Afghanistan, somewhere in one of the ancient mines there. This was where most of these spinel gems were mined in the Middle Ages, apparently. I don't know anything about that period of history or spinel gems at all. Alright, so here's the thing about these red spinel gems. They're thought of as like a great imposter, so kind of like fool's gold is confused for real gold. These red spinel gems are confused for rubies all the time throughout history. Now, why it matters, I don't really know. I guess red spinel was much more in abundance back then or something like that, because they're different in mineral composition, but these things are just as pretty as rubies. So I don't know. I don't understand gemology or whatever you call it. Now, the history of this thing is kind of like the history of red spinel itself. It's a great deceiver. This gemstone itself was used as a great deceiver. This gemstone was first in possession of the last Sultan of Granada, Abu Sa'id. I think that's how you pronounce it. I have no idea. Now, this was during the 14th century. So Granada was losing territory to this other kingdom, this Christian kingdom of Castile. This Sultan of Granada arranged some kind of a peace negotiation with this guy, King Pedro of this Castile kingdom. Well, the peace meeting was not a peace meeting at all. This King Pedro guy slaughtered the Sultan and basically everybody that showed up to this peace negotiation. The black ruby was then stolen from this guy and in possession of King Pedro now. Now, this gemstone was apparently already cursed because this first guy, this Sultan that had it, was immediately betrayed by this King Pedro. Then King Pedro has this and he finds himself in a war against his own brother. To win this battle, this King Pedro guy decides to enlist the help of this Black Prince from England, and that's where it gets the name the Black Prince's Ruby. Pedro and this Black Prince Edward teamed up and they actually beat Pedro's brother, so King Pedro became King Pedro. He kept the throne. As a result of the win and the help, he decided to give this gemstone to this Black Prince. That's whenever its history in England started. Now, as Black Prince Edward went back to England over here, King Pedro had to fight again against his brother and he ended up losing the battle and dying. Edward back in England had bad luck that was just as bad, if not worse, as Pedro did. He ended up dying of an illness before he could even inherit the throne of England, and he was like next up. He left this ruby to his son Richard II. Richard II did assume the throne, but he was murdered at the young age of 21 years old. Now, the guy that murdered this King Richard ended up having this gemstone for himself, and he died a slow death of a slow illness as well. This gemstone would change hands every time the leader of England changed for the next, I don't know, 700 years, because it's still the crown jewels of England, or one of the crown jewels. That doesn't even, anyway. Misfortune befell a lot of people throughout this process, but all of this was probably just coincidence. It was a sign of the times. A gemstone is not going to cause somebody to lose a war. It's just probably not going to happen. Just like playing a trumpet's not going to cause World War II. That kind of stuff just doesn't really happen. Unless it does, and I'm just stupid. Unless spirits are in this earth and on this world, and they inherit these gemstones. I don't know. Anyway, let's go to the next one before I lose my sanity. Gettysburg battlefield rocks. All right, so the Battle of Gettysburg is probably the most well-known battle of the entire American Civil War. It was fought in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania in 1863 and thought to be the turning point of the war. Up to as many as 80,000 men died during this battle, and that is horrible because it was brothers fighting brothers. This was just terrible. Something had to straighten out the South because slavery was wrong no matter how you look at it. You know I'm from the South. You can tell from my accent, but we were in the wrong. It's just not even a debate. Now, what's this stuff about the rocks? Well, these rocks that were on this battlefield are supposedly cursed. Are they actually cursed? Probably not. But the people that run this historical society or whatever that oversee the Battle of Gettysburg site probably spread these rumors to discourage people from stealing the rocks. That's how these things work. Just like some of these other stories, tons of packages have been returned to this society, whoever oversees this, I guess it's the government, I don't know. Anyway, these packages have been received with letters saying that they've had terrible luck, they've had stuff befall them since they've stolen rocks, stuff like that. Relationship breakdowns, health crises, financial ruin, all these things are mentioned in these return letters with these rocks. One specific man returned a package full of these rocks from Gettysburg to this society or whoever it was. He said that basically his ex-wife left him, took their son with him, and he ended up in jail. His whole life fell apart. His ex-wife had no better luck. She was in on taking the rocks as well. She had health problems. She was about to die. So it was just horrible. Everything to do with these rocks was just cursed. He didn't want them anymore. Is it all just coincidence and this person just had terrible luck as well as all these other people that return these rocks? Probably. But who knows? The Maori whalebone whip handle. All right, so this is quite literally a whip handle made out of a whalebone. This is an artifact from New Zealand that was supposedly stolen from this place called the Clendon House. Now, the Clendon House is basically a historically preserved house of somebody that was once like a well-known ship trader in New Zealand. But anyway, it has like artifacts and stuff like that in it. Now, it was stolen and then returned because everybody that's ever come in contact with it realizes that it is cursed somehow. Like, people that touch it ended up having crazy excruciating pain on them whenever they do something as little as stub their toe. It's thought among these people that it has some sort of tapu curse on it. Now, what a tapu curse is basically some sort of Polynesian tradition that says that like there's spirits and there's stuff like that that can curse you, can inherit or not inherit, but inhabit objects. Kind of weird stuff to explain because I'm not very knowledgeable in it. The Maori people that this thing originated with were quite literally the like ancestral inhabitants of New Zealand. So they were like an Eastern Polynesian civilization. They believed in these tapu curses, spirits, whatever you want to call them. So they believed that this was associated with this whalebone whip. For the most part, this whip handle was more of a symbol of something larger. So it was a symbol of the problems that come with stealing artifacts and the ancient beliefs of the people there being that you can't touch this kind of stuff because it's going to come back to haunt you. All these people like this were very spiritual, so they didn't believe in like the big three Abrahamic faiths or whatever, but they believed in these spirits of everyday life and stuff that happens to all of their ancient artifacts, stuff like that. If people are stealing them, something bad should happen to them, so that's why they believe there's a curse with this stuff. This entire list so far, and this is only the first two tiers, we're going to make a dedicated video for the rest of them, but everything like this shows the problem that comes with stealing artifacts. For the most part, everything on this list has to do with somebody stole something that they should not have. Whenever they steal this stuff they should not have, something bad happens to them because that's what everybody wants to happen to them. These artifacts belong with their original owners. Now, I know that that's not how the world actually works, but still, that's how these people think it should be because they have these cultural significances with these artifacts. I think we can all take a lesson from this video to just let something be. Don't steal something. If you acquire something, acquire it legally and for a great amount of money if that's what it takes. I'm gonna go get started editing this video and start recording the next segment of this series. So if you've enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button for me. Check out this video linked on screen. It's gonna be the Ancient Horrors Iceberg. It's a longer video than this one and it'll take you through a whole journey of stuff similar to this. Now's whenever I would make some sort of funny quip about going to steal an artifact or something in the meantime, but in the meantime today, I'm gonna just sit here and mind my own business. Till the next one, peace.